what if I told you that the hardest part of rolling out artificial intelligence at your company has like absolutely nothing to do with code?
Right.
Or, server farms or the raw computing power of neural networks.
It never is.
What if the actual threat to your organization's future isn't some rogue AI taking over the network, but just, Dave in accounting sitting at his desk completely terrified to type a question into a prompt box?
That is the great paradox of the current technological revolution, honestly. We have all these executives in boardrooms treating AI like it is this magic wand that will instantly solve every operational inefficiency.
Just wave it and everything's fixed.
Exactly. And meanwhile, the actual human beings expected to wield that wand are just paralyzed by a very quiet, very real anxiety about what this actually means for their livelihoods.
Yeah, that tension is so real. So, welcome to the Deep Dive. We are really glad you're with us today because our mission today is to look at AI adoption through a completely different lens.
The more human lens.
Right. We aren't here to debate the parameters of the latest large language model or, the ethics of machine learning. We're looking at this strictly through the lens of you, the user, the employee, the manager.
And that very human psychological friction that happens when a company tries to basically force a paradigm-shifting technology into your daily workflow.
Exactly. So if you are someone who feels a spike of anxiety every time your company announces a new quote-unquote AI initiative, or if you happen to be a leader wondering why your team isn't utilizing these incredibly expensive enterprise tools you just bought.
Which is happening everywhere, by the way.
Oh, for sure. If that's you, you are in the right place. We're going to unpack the mechanics of change management and why human psychology is, the ultimate bottleneck in tech adoption.
So to do that, we are looking at a really brilliant roadmap laid out in a May 2026 article.
Yeah, the article is titled AI for All Humans.
Right, and it's written by Matt Holmes, who is a Chief Information Systems Security Officer, a CISO.
Yes, but with 15 years of experience in training and development. Now, I want you to just stop and think about that combination of titles for a second.
It's kind of a wild combo.
It really is,
Yeah.
Because his day job is to aggressively protect systems from threats, right? Lock down data, build digital fortresses. But his background is in teaching humans how to use systems to grow and be more productive.
It is a fascinating inherent tension because usually, the cybersecurity department is known as the Department of No.
Yeah, exactly.
Their entire mandate is risk mitigation. They're the ones telling you that you can't use a certain app or that you have to change your 30-character password every 2 weeks.
So annoying, but necessary.
Right. But a training and development professional is essentially in the Department of Yes. Their job is empowerment. They want you to experiment, to learn, to push boundaries. So Matt Holmes basically exists at the exact intersection of those two competing philosophies.
And he leverages that beautifully right from the opening of his article. Like, he doesn't start with some dense manifesto on data privacy or the computational limits of generative AI. He starts by poking fun at himself.
The thumbnail image?
Yes. The thumbnail image for their article is this slightly absurd, clearly computer-generated piece of art,
Yeah.
and his very first line is, "Let's be honest, the thumbnail hooked you. Obviously, I hand-painted this image." Followed by a smirk emoji before he admits, "Of course, I used AI."
Which honestly is a highly calculated pedagogical move.
How so?
Well, when you are dealing with a topic that carries a massive cognitive load, and right now, artificial intelligence carries the highest cognitive and emotional load of any technology in the workplace, humor is a release valve.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, by opening with a self-deprecating joke about using an AI image generator, he immediately deflates the tension in the room. He is signaling to the reader, like, look, I'm a high-level cybersecurity executive, but even I am just messing around with this stuff to make quirky pictures for a social media post. It's approachable.
It totally brings the temperature down. And that is so necessary because he immediately transitions into the reality of how these tools actually make their way into our lives, which usually starts with some massive bureaucratic green light.
A rubber stamp.
Right. He brings up a real-world example, pointing out that the state of Alabama recently gave the official stamp of approval for the governmental use of artificial intelligence.
Which, if you understand how government procurement and IT governance works, sounds like a monumental finish line.
Right, because governments aren't exactly known for moving fast.
Exactly. To get a state government, which is arguably one of the most risk-averse, red tape-heavy organizations on Earth, to formally approve a rapidly evolving, highly unpredictable technology, involves a staggering amount of friction.
Oh, I can only imagine.
We're talking legislative debates, rigorous security audits, endless committee hearings, and massive budgetary allocations.
Right. So if you are reading that headline, you think, wow, they climbed the mountain. The hard part is over. Alabama is now an AI powerhouse.
But they're not.
No. Holmes just takes a sledgehammer to that assumption. He writes, on the surface, it would appear that proving AI for governmental use was the hard part. That is not the case. He essentially calls the official approval a total illusion. The rubber stamp is literally just a piece of paper.
Because the reality of technology adoption is that a mandate from the top does absolutely nothing to change the behavior at the bottom.
Wait, say that again. That's so important.
A mandate from the top does absolutely nothing to change behavior at the bottom. You can sign all the executive orders you want. A company can spend tens of millions of dollars licensing enterprise AI software. But if the human beings sitting at the desks, the caseworkers, the analysts, the administrative assistants, do not know how to actually extract value from the tool.
Or worse, they are actively avoiding it.
Exactly. Then that multi-million-dollar investment is basically a paperweight. The real work is entirely in implementation and training.
And this is where he introduces this incredibly grounded analogy. I love this part. He says, and I'll quote him here, I believe AI even knows you just don't give a 15-year-old the car keys to a high-performance vehicle, like a 2015 Hyundai Accent. Which, by the way, he instantly clarifies as a humble brag, as that's his actual car, and say, have at it.
The self-awareness to call it 2015 Hyundai Accent a high-performance vehicle is just great writing.
Yeah.
It completely grounds a very abstract tech conversation in mundane, everyday reality.
It is hilarious. But, okay, let's unpack this. I want to really test this analogy because I'm not entirely sure I buy it at face value.
Okay, let's hear it.
Well, a car, even a brand new one, let alone a 2015 Hyundai, is a machine governed by the known laws of physics. If you turn the steering wheel left, the car goes left.
Right.
If you press the brake, it stops. It is a predictable system.
Yeah.
But AI specifically, the large language models everyone is dealing with right now, doesn't always act like a predictable machine. It is more of a probabilistic prediction engine.
Sure.
Sometimes it hallucinates.
Right.
Sometimes it gives you a different answer to the exact same prompt. So is handing an employee an AI tool really like giving a teenager a car? Or is it more like handing them the keys to a completely alien spacecraft where the buttons randomly change functions while you are flying it?
There's a very sharp distinction to make, and your skepticism is warranted if we were talking purely about the nature of the technology itself. You are right that an LLM is kind of a black box compared to a combustion engine.
Yeah.
But what's fascinating here is if you look closely at what Holmes is doing, he isn't using the car analogy to explain how AI works. He is using it to explain how we must manage the humans using it. He's talking about the mechanisms of IT governance.
Okay, wait, break that down for me. What is the mechanism there?
So when you teach a teenager to drive, you don't just hand them the keys and say, good luck.
No, definitely not.
Right. You put them in an empty parking lot first. Then you sit in the passenger seat on a quiet residential street. You are establishing a structured environment where they can make mistakes that aren't fatal. In corporate IT terms, Holmes calls this building guardrails.
Guardrails.
Yeah, and he breaks this process down into three very specific phases: training, testing, and monitoring.
So establishing the parking lot before hitting the highway.
Exactly. And the most critical phase is that third one, monitoring. Because once the teenager has their license, or once the employee has access to the AI, they are operating semi-autonomously. For this phase, Holmes uses another brilliant touchstone. He says that IT monitoring needs to function like Life 360.
Life 360. Oh my gosh. Okay. For anyone listening who has thankfully avoided the modern teenage parenting experience, Life 360 is an app you install on your family's smartphones. It runs in the background.
Yep.
It tracks their GPS location. It logs how fast they were driving, and it can even detect hard braking or rapid acceleration. It is designed to give parents peace of mind when their kids are out on the road.
And from the teenager's perspective, it is a dystopian surveillance nightmare.
Total nightmare.
But that inherent tension is exactly why it perfectly illustrates the reality of a corporate AI rollout. Think about how Life 360 mechanically operates. It does not grab the steering wheel. It does not press the brakes for the teenager.
Right.
The user retains total autonomy over the vehicle. The app merely sits in the background, quietly observing, and only triggers an alert if the user crosses a dangerous threshold. Like, doing 90 miles an hour down a school zone.
Wait, let me stop you there because I want to make sure I'm translating this into corporate IT correctly. You are saying the IT department shouldn't be approving every single prompt and employee types.
Exactly.
They shouldn't be micromanaging the daily workflow. They just need systems running in the background to make sure someone doesn't accidentally copy-paste highly classified company financial data into a public chatbot, essentially leaking trade secrets to the entire internet.
Precisely. And this gets into the very real concept of heuristic behavioral analysis.
Hold on, you just dropped some heavy CISO jargon onto me. Heuristic behavioral analysis. Plain English, please?
Fair enough. So traditional cybersecurity works by looking for known bad things, like a bouncer with a list of banned people. If a file matches a known virus signature, it blocks it.
Makes sense.
But AI introduces new, complex risks that aren't traditional viruses. So instead of looking for known bad files, heuristic behavioral analysis looks for weird human behavior.
Weird human behavior.
Yeah. It's like your credit card company. If you buy a coffee in New York and 10 minutes later your card is used to buy a television in Paris, the system flags it. Not because buying a TV is illegal, but because the behavior breaks the established pattern.
Ah, okay. So the corporate life 360 isn't judging what I'm asking the AI. It's just noticing if I suddenly try to upload a massive database of client social security numbers to a server outside the company firewall.
Exactly. It provides gentle but firm oversight. It allows the employee to explore and play with the AI, which is absolutely vital for them to figure out how to use it, while mitigating the risk of a catastrophic data breach.
Which brings us right back to you listening to this deep dive. I want you to think about how your own organization has handled this over the last year. Did leadership just send out a mass email with a link to a new enterprise AI tool and basically say, hey, everyone, we're an AI-first company now, figure it out?
Which is terrifying.
Did they hand you the keys to the spacecraft without a manual, without the empty parking lot, and without the digital Life 360 running in the background? Because if they did, and you are feeling an intense amount of anxiety about using it, your anxiety is completely justified.
It is the only rational response. I mean, when you were handed a highly potent tool without any structural guardrails, the psychological burden of preventing a disaster falls entirely on you, the untrained user.
Wow, yeah.
Every prompt feels like navigating a minefield, where one wrong click could result in a fireable offense.
And that fear of making a colossal, career-ending mistake transitions us directly into what I think is the most insightful part of Holmes's analysis. We understand that we need the guardrails to prevent a catastrophe, but what does that catastrophe look like in our collective imagination? Holmes uses another pop culture touchstone here, and it's perfect.
I know exactly what you're going to say.
He writes, everyone wants the keys to AI. Everyone wants to clone a dinosaur, but as we know, it only takes one rogue IT guy to set off a string of sequels that can ruin a movie franchise.
The Jurassic Park metaphor. It is almost too perfectly aligned with the current AI boom.
It really is, because think about the energy in corporate America right now. The executives who are buying these AI platforms are acting exactly like John Hammond looking at a mosquito trapped in amber.
Spared no expense.
Exactly. They are blinded by the sheer potential. They see massive cost savings. They see unprecedented efficiency. They see the ability to do things their competitors can't. They're standing there saying, we're going to clone a dinosaur, and it's going to be glorious.
And they're completely ignoring the reality that velociraptors are highly intelligent, unpredictable predators that test fences for weaknesses.
Right.
But the key phrase Holmes uses isn't just about the dinosaur. It is the rogue IT guy.
Dennis Nedry, the guy who shuts down the security systems to steal the embryos and plunges the entire park into chaos.
Right. But in the modern corporate context, the rogue IT guy isn't necessarily a malicious saboteur trying to steal embryos.
Oh, interesting.
Often, the rogue IT guy is just an employee who is trying to do their job efficiently, gets frustrated by the rigid corporate guardrails, and decides to use an unapproved public AI tool on their personal phone to process company data.
Oh, wow. So you are talking about shadow IT.
Exactly. Shadow IT is when employees use software or hardware that is not explicitly approved by the IT department. And right now, AI is creating the biggest wave of shadow IT we have ever seen.
Really?
Oh, absolutely. If you don't give your employees an approved, safe, monitored way to use AI, they're going to use the public versions anyway because they want the efficiency.
They want to get their work done faster.
Right. And that is how you end up with real-world fiascos, like when employees at major tech firms accidentally fed proprietary source code into public language models, inadvertently training the public model on their own corporate secrets. That is the rogue IT guy scenario.
That is terrifying. And it explains why Holmes says that the water cooler talk at most companies isn't about the exciting efficiency of AI. It is dominated by doom and gloom. Like when you open your phone and scroll through the news, you aren't seeing articles about how AI saved someone 20 minutes on a spreadsheet.
No, you're seeing the disasters.
You are seeing headlines about deepfakes destabilizing elections, AI hallucinating legal precedents in federal court, and massive impending job displacement. We are being fed a relentless media diet of worst-case scenarios.
Which triggers a very primal response in the human brain. When the amygdala, the brain's threat detection center, is constantly stimulated by these existential doom and gloom narratives, higher-order cognitive functions just shut down.
Right.
You cannot learn a complex new skill like prompt engineering when your brain is operating in survival mode, convinced that the machine you are supposed to be learning is actually there to hunt you into unemployment.
So how does a leader fix that? Because you can't just send out a cheerful memo saying, hey, team, don't worry about the news. AI is our friend. That is toxic positivity, and employees see right through it.
Exactly. And this is Holmes's point one, set the tone. He argues that leadership must actively and transparently acknowledge the doom and gloom.
Call it out.
Yes. You have to look your team in the eye and say, yes, this technology is incredibly disruptive. Yes, there are massive risks. Yes, the news sounds terrifying. You validate their very real fears. But then you execute a highly specific pivot.
Okay, what's the pivot?
You take the conversation out of the realm of science fiction and ground it relentlessly in practical, mundane business use cases.
You pull them away from the velociraptor and show them the spreadsheet.
Precisely. Holmes lists 3 specific grounding metrics: improving efficiency, increasing accuracy, and strengthening service delivery. Notice how boring those sound.
Very boring.
That is intentional. Boring is safe. Boring lowers the amygdala response. You tell the employee, we aren't using this tool to replace human judgment. We are using it to instantly format your weekly reports so you don't have to spend 3 hours fighting with Excel.
And he summarizes this approach with a phrase that I honestly didn't expect to see in an article written by a cybersecurity expert. He says we need to frame AI as a tool that enhances the overall joy of work.
The joy of work. It is a profound framing.
But let's really interrogate that phrase, because in a corporate setting, joy can sound like, HR buzzword bingo. What does the joy of work actually mean mechanically when we are talking about using a large language model?
Well, if you strip away the corporate speak, the joy of work is fundamentally about the absence of unnecessary friction. Think about the tasks in your day that actively drain your cognitive energy.
Oh, data entry. Digging through a messy inbox to find one specific attachment from 3 months ago.
Reformatting a slide deck to match a new corporate template.
Yes.
These tasks offer zero intellectual stimulation. They are purely mechanical drudgery.
They're the things that make you stare blankly out the window and question your career choices.
Right. What Holmes is arguing is that the true practical value of AI in the workplace isn't about replacing the human being. It is about replacing the drudgery.
Yeah.
And AI does not experience boredom.
Sure.
It can process a massive unstructured data set and pull out the 3 relevant trends in seconds. If it does that heavy lifting, it frees up your cognitive bandwidth to do the things that actually provide human satisfaction.
Like creative problem solving.
Exactly. Strategic thinking, building relationships with clients.
He explicitly notes that AI is not a replacement for the people who deliver it. And this is the reframe for you, the listener. If you are feeling that dread, that fear of obsolescence, remember that the AI doesn't experience the joy of the final product. It doesn't get the satisfaction of a job well done. You do. The AI is the hammer. You are the carpenter.
That's a great way to put it.
You are meant to be the artisan who leverages the tool to build something better, faster.
But, and this is a massive but, simply telling someone that they are the artisan and that the tool will bring them joy doesn't automatically cure their anxiety. You can validate their fear all you want, but if you don't fundamentally change their relationship with the technology, they will remain paralyzed.
Which moves us into the core psychological shift required for adoption. Holmes calls this point 2, give them the power. And honestly, this feels like
It is a complete inversion of the traditional model. Historically, software is something that happens to you. Executives purchase a massive enterprise suite, say a new ERP system or CRM. The IT department installs it, and then management dictates, this is the new workflow. You must input your data exactly like this in these specific fields or the system breaks.
Right. It is a top-down, non-negotiable mandate. You are forced to conform your human behavior to the rigid limitations of the software. You essentially become a servant to the machine's architecture.
But Holmes argues that AI cannot be deployed that way, because AI is inherently flexible and open-ended. Forcing a rigid top-down structure on it completely neutralizes its power.
And it spikes the user's anxiety at the same time.
Exactly. Anxiety is almost always rooted in a feeling of powerlessness. If the narrative is AI is a massive disruption that is happening to your job, you feel like a passive victim. But if the narrative is, here is a highly capable tool, you have the power to teach it how to help you, you regain agency. You are in control.
So what does this all mean? Let me try a new analogy here, because I think a lot of people make the mistake of treating an AI chatbot like a new human coworker.
Which is a mistake.
Right, because if you treat it like a human, you expect it to have human context and common sense, which it absolutely does not have. It's just predicting the next word based on probability.
Right.
So instead of a coworker, what if we think of AI as an incredibly fast, highly obedient librarian who has read every book in the world, but possesses absolutely zero common sense and doesn't know what your actual job is?
That is a much more mechanically accurate metaphor.
Yeah.
An LLM is exactly like that hyper-literal librarian.
Right. So if you just walk up to that librarian and say, give me some information on our Q3 sales, they are going to dump 10,000 pages of random data on your desk.
And you are going to be overwhelmed and frustrated.
The old software model trained you to be the librarian's assistant learning the Dewey Decimal System so you could fetch the books yourself. But giving the user the power means training the user to be the director of the library.
Oh, I like that.
You don't have to learn the Dewey Decimal System. You just have to learn how to give the librarian incredibly precise contextual instructions. You have to say, I need a summary of the Q3 sales in the Northeast region, focusing only on our mid-tier products, formatted as a bulleted list for a 10-minute executive presentation.
And that right there is the entire cognitive mechanism of prompt engineering. You are not writing code. You are exercising managerial authority over an eager, literal-minded entity.
But I'm going to push back on this because in the real world, empowerment is a tricky thing. What if the user doesn't want the power?
What do you mean?
Let's say you have an employee who has been doing their job exceptionally well for 15 years. They have their spreadsheets optimized. They know their workflow inside and out. They are comfortable. When you walk in and say, hey, here's this incredibly powerful AI librarian, you have the power to shape it and revolutionize your workflow, they might just look at you and say, no, thank you, my workflow's fine. I don't want to manage a digital librarian. I just want to do my job the way I always have.
Yeah, that happens a lot.
How does giving them power solve anything if the real issue is just sheer change fatigue?
That is the most difficult hurdle in change management. Change fatigue is real. People are exhausted by the constant demand to optimize and relearn their jobs. And this is exactly why Holmes insists that this power cannot be imposed.
Because then it's not power.
Right. If you force empowerment onto an employee under the threat of obsolescence, it ceases to be empowerment. It becomes a hostile mandate.
Congratulations, you've been promoted to AI manager. You have 3 weeks to figure it out, or your department is redundant.
Exactly. That is a recipe for mutiny. To navigate change fatigue, Holmes identifies 3 non-negotiable leadership traits: clarity, realism, and optimism.
Let's unpack those in the context of our reluctant veteran employee. Clarity means being completely transparent about what the tool is and what it isn't. It's not magic, it's a prediction engine.
Right. And realism is crucial for maintaining trust. You have to acknowledge to that veteran employee, look, I know your spreadsheet works perfectly, and I know that this AI is going to hallucinate sometimes, and you are going to have to double-check its math, and it's going to be frustrating at first.
Setting expectations.
If a leader pretends the AI is flawless, the employee will discard the tool the very first time it makes a mistake.
But optimism is what gets them over the hump. It's the belief that the initial friction is worth the long-term payoff. We are going to fumble through this together, but in 6 months, this is going to save you 5 hours a week.
Exactly.
But honestly, talking about clarity, realism, and optimism can sound like textbook management theory. How does a leader actually embody this day to day?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, we actually have to step outside the single article and look at Matt Holmes' broader philosophy as a leader. Because when you synthesize his writing across different platforms, you uncover a deeply humanistic approach to management that completely subverts his title as a cybersecurity executive.
Yes. Okay, I went down a bit of a rabbit hole on his LinkedIn profile while researching for this deep dive, and it is fascinating.
Oh, it really is.
This is a guy whose literal profession is dedicated to order, risk mitigation, and preventing chaos. And yet, he wrote an article back in January of 2020 titled Christmas Inflatables and Cybersecurity.
I love that one.
In it, he freely admits that his family is a Griswold type of family, meaning they cover their lawn in an absurd, chaotic, massive amount of inflatable holiday decorations.
It is the absolute antithesis of structured corporate order. It is structurally precarious, wildly inefficient, and purely driven by a desire to create a sense of joy and wonder.
Exactly. And you see this again in a piece he wrote in November 2019 called Fostering Flexibility, where he passionately advocates for allowing employees to shift their hours, come in early, and leave early to balance their personal lives. He doesn't view employees as cogs in a machine that need to be bolted down to a desk from 9 to 5.
Which tells us everything we need to know about how he interprets the phrase, give them the power. He sees employees as messy, unique, inherently valuable humans who thrive when they are trusted in flexible environments.
Right.
He is saying, give them the power to execute my rigid corporate vision. He is saying, give them the trust to figure out how this tool can make their specific individual lives better. When a leader genuinely trusts their team with that level of autonomy, the narrative organically shifts from a fear of the unknown to a cautious and eventually enthusiastic confidence.
But, and there's always a but, you can have all the trust, flexibility, and optimism in the world. But if you don't actually teach the employee how to talk to the AI librarian, the confidence will evaporate the second they stare at a blank prompt box.
It goes right out the window.
And this brings us to the actual physical mechanics of how we teach these skills. Holmes's point 3, multiple channels of learning, or, as we like to call it, throwing out war and peace.
Yes. Drawing on a decade and a half of training and development experience, Holmes attacks a sacred cow of corporate IT, the Comprehensive Software Manual. His core thesis is incredibly simple, but universally ignored by massive organizations. One size does not fit all.
It is baffling how companies still get this wrong. How many times have you been subjected to this? You get an email about a new software update, and attached is a 150-page PDF document, heavily watermarked, filled with microscopic screenshots of menus you've never seen.
And you never read it.
You are expected to read it, internalize it, and execute it, but no one ever reads it.
Holmes vehemently rejects this approach. He explicitly states it does not have to be war and peace. And from a cognitive psychology standpoint, he's absolutely right.
Because it's overwhelming.
Because why do companies produce those massive manuals? They aren't pedagogical tools. They are CYA documents.
Okay.
Cover your ass.
Oh, for sure.
The IT department creates them so that when an employee inevitably breaks the system, IT can point to page 74, paragraph 3, and say, see? We told you not to do that.
It's liability management masquerading as education.
Precisely. Handing someone a Tolstoy-sized manual about a topic they are already deeply anxious about is the most effective way to ensure they never, ever adopt the tool. It maximizes cognitive load and triggers immediate disengagement.
So if we throw the massive binder in the trash, what is the alternative?
Well, Holmes lays out an incredibly rich, multi-layered ecosystem of learning. He doesn't completely abandon formal structures. He acknowledges the place for classroom-style training, but he treats that as merely the foundation.
Okay, so what's the rest of the house?
To actually build fluency, he relies heavily on decentralized peer-to-peer learning. He specifically advocates for utilizing AI mentors and super users.
This is perhaps the most powerful mechanism for overcoming tech anxiety. Think about the social dynamics of an office. If the chief information systems security officer comes down from the executive suite to teach you how to write a prompt, there is an inherent power imbalance. The user is intimidated.
Absolutely.
But a super user isn't an IT executive. A super user is Sarah from marketing or David from logistics. It is a peer who happens to be slightly more enthusiastic and figured out how to use the AI to automate their weekly vendor reports.
Exactly. When David from logistics teaches you how to use the tool, he isn't talking about application programming interfaces or neural network latency. He's speaking your departmental dialect.
Right. He says, look, if you paste the shipping manifest in here and use this specific sentence, it formats the customs forms in 4 seconds.
It grounds the abstract technology in immediate, tangible reality. Peer-to-peer learning bypasses the authority resistance that many employees feel toward top-down IT mandates.
But Holmes goes further, right? outlining specific micro-learning formats designed to continually lower the barrier to entry.
He does. He suggests lunch and learn activities, weekly 15-minute virtual classes, and bite-sized videos hosted on internal platforms like SharePoint.
And I have to pause here because reading his article, there is one specific format he calls out that I found incredibly validating. He explicitly recommends podcast-style videos and adds a note in parentheses saying, "This is a big win."
Which is wonderfully serendipitous for us sitting here doing a deep dive on the topic.
A little meta.
But it's not just flattery. There is a deep neurological reason why conversational audio and video formats are a big win for corporate training.
Walk us through that. Why do you, the listener, choose to consume complex information by listening to us banter rather than reading a textbook?
Because human beings are biologically hardwired to process information through narrative and conversation.
Right.
When you read a sterile, bullet-pointed PowerPoint slide, your brain has to work exceptionally hard to encode that data. It feels like studying. But when you listen to two people actively discussing a concept, debating an analogy, and contextualizing the information through real-world examples, it activates the brain's social and narrative processing centers. It feels like a story. And stories are inherently easier to remember than data points.
Plus, the micro-learning aspect, the 15-minute bite-sized video, is an act of profound empathy for the learner.
How so?
If your brain's RAM is completely maxed out just dealing with the fear of the blinking AI cursor, an hour-long seminar will cause you to shut down entirely. You go into survival mode.
For sure.
But a 15-minute video, that is one digestible concept. Here is how you ask the AI to summarize a long email chain. That's it. You practice that one micro skill for a week until it becomes muscle memory, and then you move on to the next.
It is the Tapas approach to education. Small, manageable plates instead of a massive, heavy meal that puts you to sleep.
I love the Tapas approach.
Right. And then, to cap off this entire learning ecosystem, Holmes introduces a concept that directly targets the amygdala's fear response. He suggests making the training creative through AI competitions.
Gamification. This is brilliant because it actively subverts the doom and gloom water cooler talk.
Exactly.
If everyone is terrified of the rogue IT guy and the dinosaurs, you flip the script. You announce a departmental contest. Who can use the AI to generate the most hilariously terrible mission statement for a fake company?
Or who can automate the most agonizingly boring part of their weekly admin duties by Friday?
Yes. The mechanism of play is incredibly powerful. Play is the fundamental way that humans, and frankly all mammals, learn to navigate complex environments. When we engage in play, the brain releases dopamine, which enhances memory retention.
And it simultaneously dials down the cortisol, which is the stress hormone. A competition reframes the user's interaction with the AI. It's no longer a high-stakes pass-or-fail test of your technological competence. It is a game.
You are basically tricking them into mastering prompt engineering.
Pretty much.
They think they're just messing around trying to win a $25 coffee shop gift card, but secretly they're developing an intuitive understanding of natural language processing and algorithmic iteration.
Exactly. You are building technological fluency under the guise of recreation.
Okay, so let's assess where we are. We have set a transparent tone that validates the fear. We have shifted the power dynamic to make the user the director of the digital librarian. We have thrown out the massive manuals and built a rich, gamified micro-learning ecosystem. By all metrics, the initial rollout is a massive success.
The lunch and learns are packed.
Right. But what happens next week? What happens on a random Tuesday long after the competition is over when the user is sitting alone at their desk, they get stuck on a complex prompt, the AI spits out garbage, and they feel that old wave of frustration wash over them?
Yeah, that inevitably happens.
That scenario brings us to our final crucial concept, Section 5, the hungry learner and the ultimate KPI.
And this is where Holmes identifies the silent killer of almost all corporate initiatives. He writes, "In training, one of the more difficult tasks is follow-up after training."
It is the absolute Achilles heel of organizational change. It reminds me of the classic behavioral economics problem of the January gym membership.
Oh, that's a great comparison.
We all know exactly how this works. On January 1st, motivation is at its absolute peak. You buy the expensive membership, you get the fancy running shoes, you download the biometric tracking apps.
You are ready.
You show up for the mandatory orientation session, and the personal trainer walks you through how to use the complex weight machines. You feel incredibly empowered.
And the gym floor is completely packed with hundreds of other people riding that exact same wave of initial enthusiasm.
But cut to February 12th. The gym is empty. The fancy shoes are in the back of your closet. Why does that happen? Exactly. It is rarely because the person didn't cognitively understand how to operate the treadmill. It happens because of friction. You go to the gym, you try to use a new machine, you adjust the seat wrong, you feel a tweak in your shoulder, you look around and feel slightly embarrassed, and you leave.
Yep, we've all been there.
And because absolutely no one from the gym calls you to check in, to adjust your form, or to encourage you, you simply retreat to your old, comfortable, sedentary habits. The friction of the new behavior outweighed the lack of structural support.
That behavioral loop is identical to what happens with software adoption. The initial training sessions, the gamified competitions, that is the January 1st enthusiasm.
But software, especially AI, introduces constant micro-frictions. A prompt doesn't work. A hallucination ruins a report. Without structural follow-up, users will inevitably abandon the new tool and retreat to the safety of their old spreadsheets and manual data entry.
And Holmes offers a hard-nosed, systemic solution to this human frailty. He says, make it a training priority, objective, or KPI to ensure there is follow-up on training.
KPI, Key Performance Indicator. Let's talk about what that actually means in the real world of corporate management.
Right.
Typically, KPIs are rigid business metrics: revenue growth, customer churn rate, manufacturing output. What Holmes is arguing is that for a technological shift this massive, the act of checking in on people needs to be elevated to a core metric of success for the IT and training departments.
This is a profound structural shift because of a simple truth in organizational behavior. What gets measured is what gets managed.
Say that again.
What gets measured is what gets managed. If the training department's only KPI is what percentage of the staff watch the 15-minute AI orientation video, their job is technically finished the moment the employee hits the play button.
They can just wash their hands of it.
They can.
Yeah.
But if their KPI is how many one-on-one troubleshooting sessions were conducted 30 days after the initial rollout, it completely rewires the behavior of the IT staff.
It forces the IT department to transition from being reactive to proactive. Instead of sitting in a ticketing queue waiting for something to break, they are actively walking the digital floor, looking for the friction points.
Exactly. And there's a very specific group of people they need to be looking for, which Holmes highlights in a really wonderful sentence. He says, be available to those who are hungry for more.
Hungry for more. It's an evocative phrase that acknowledges the reality of adoption curves. In any organization, you are not going to have uniform adoption. You will have a bell curve.
Always.
On one end, you have the deeply terrified, reluctant users. In the massive middle, you have the cautiously optimistic people who will use it for basic tasks. But on the far end, you have a small, highly vocal group of people who are absolutely ravenous.
These are the people who watch the 15-minute video, immediately grasp the potential, and by the next morning, they're trying to figure out how to chain multiple AI tools together to entirely automate their department's workflow.
Yes, these are your future super users. They are the seeds of your peer-to-peer mentoring network. But here's the danger. If leadership is not explicitly available to feed that hunger, if there is no advanced training, no sandbox environment for them to test complex integrations, no clear channel for them to ask highly technical questions, that enthusiasm will turn into deep frustration.
They will feel stifled by the guardrail.
Exactly. Being open and available means cultivating a culture where asking a highly complex question about a new tool is rewarded as a sign of ambition rather than dismissed as a nuisance.
And this leads us to what I believe is the emotional core of this entire exploration and Holmes's concluding thesis. It is a stunning admission from a man whose entire career is built on complex technical systems. He writes, AI isn't the hard part. Helping people use it confidently, that's the real work.
Wow.
It is the ultimate distillation of everything we've discussed today. The technology itself, the millions of parameters, the neural networks, the computational mathematics is solvable. It is binary. It functions on logic.
But the human element, the profound fear of obsolescence, the ego-bruising reality of being a beginner again after 20 years in your career, the anxiety of looking foolish in front of your colleagues because you can't figure out a prompt, that is infinitely more complex than any algorithm.
That is where the actual friction of the future lies.
And this is the challenge we want to issue to you listening right now. We want you to hold a mirror up to your own professional habits. When your company introduces a new platform, or when you read an article about a new AI capability, how do you react to the friction? Are you demanding follow-ups from your organization?
It's a great question.
When you inevitably hit a wall and get completely frustrated with a tool, do you suffer in silence and quietly abandon it, or do you actively seek out the super users in your network and ask for help? Are you allowing yourself to be the hungry learner, or are you just trying to survive the January gym membership until management forgets about the initiative?
It requires a tremendous amount of vulnerability to admit that you need follow-up. In a corporate culture that historically rewards you for having all the answers and appearing flawlessly competent, raising your hand and saying, I watched the video, I read the memo, and I still have absolutely no idea how to make this AI librarian do what I want, is an act of bravery.
It really is. But it is the only path forward. If AI isn't the hard part, then the truly hard part is subduing our own egos and giving ourselves permission to be clumsy, awkward beginners again.
Which is exactly why Holmes's entire framework, setting a transparent tone, building the Life 360 guardrails, utilizing peer mentors, and gamifying the learning process is so vital. He isn't just teaching prompt engineering, he is constructing psychological safety nets to catch people when they inevitably stumble.
Okay, let's take a breath because we have covered an immense amount of conceptual territory today. We took a seemingly simple post from a cybersecurity executive and unpacked the deep, often uncomfortable psychology of workplace transformation.
We really did.
We started by shattering the illusion of the rubber stamp, realizing that an official approval is just a piece of paper, and the real challenge is human adoption. We explored the brilliant Hyundai accent analogy, understanding that you need Life 360-style guardrails, not to micromanage, but to prevent the catastrophic rogue IT guy scenario.
We validated the doom scrolling and the fear of the velociraptor, learning that leaders must acknowledge the anxiety before they can pivot to the mundane, practical use cases that actually enhance the joy of work.
Right. We redefined empowerment, realizing that users must be trained not as assistants to a software program, but as the directors of a hyper-literal digital librarian.
We aggressively threw out War and Peace, discarding the massive CYA manuals in favor of multiple bite-sized channels of micro-learning, peer-to-peer mentoring, and the brain-hacking power of gamification.
And finally, we confronted the ghost of the January gym membership, cementing the idea that the ultimate KPI of tech adoption is proactive follow-up, ensuring we constantly feed the hungry learners. Because in the end, the antidote to AI fear isn't a better algorithm, it is human empathy.
AI isn't the hard part. Helping people use it confidently. That's the real work.
It's a brilliant, profoundly human-centric way to navigate this technological revolution. But as always on the deep dive, we don't want to just wrap up and leave you with a neat summary.
Never.
We want to push the concepts we've explored just a little bit further into new territory and give you something provocative to chew on long after you finish listening.
And this brings us to a logical, if somewhat radical, conclusion based on Matt Holmes' philosophy. If we genuinely accept his premise that the absolute most difficult aspect of integrating artificial intelligence into our lives is not mastering the underlying technology, but rather managing our own human confidence, mitigating our deeply ingrained anxieties, and retraining our brains to be comfortable as awkward beginners, then we must completely reevaluate what we prioritize in our own professional development.
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
Think about the sheer volume of anxiety-inducing advice out there right now. We are constantly told that we need to learn Python, that we must become elite prompt engineers, that we have to deeply understand the architecture of large language models if we want to remain employable in the next decade.
It's everywhere.
But what if that is entirely backward? What if the most vital, indispensable skill you need to develop for the future of work has absolutely nothing to do with technology?
What would it be then?
What if the most important skill you can cultivate right now is your own emotional regulation? What if the true superpower of the AI era is simply your capacity for patience? Not just patience with a chatbot that confidently hallucinates fake data, but radical, enduring patience with yourself. So here is the question I want you to carry with you today. The next time you sit down at your desk to try a new AI tool, and you get hopelessly, maddeningly frustrated because it isn't doing what you want, and you feel that familiar, icy spike of anxiety telling you that you are falling behind, how will you treat yourself in that exact moment? Will you act as the rigid, punitive manager demanding instant, flawless competence? Or will you act as the empathetic leader, providing yourself with the clarity, realism, and optimism you need to take a breath and try the prompt one more time?
That is a phenomenal question to end on. Because the future of work isn't just about how flawlessly we can collaborate with machines. It's about how gracefully we treat the human beings operating them, starting entirely with ourselves. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the human side of AI.
Thanks for being here.
We hope it gave you some clarity, maybe lowered the temperature of the anxiety a little bit, and provided you with a completely new framework for looking at the blinking cursor right in front of you. Stay curious, give yourself some grace, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.